Hey, it's Maryanne. Welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. As you know, I'm your host, and I teach you all kinds of tools, tips, and techniques for you to grow your influence as a fundraiser, raise more with less stress, and build long lasting, authentic, aligned, beautiful, easy relationships with your donors. And today we are going to talk about relationship building and how, and a very, very simple tool that you can use to up your responsiveness. I really need to start actually saying the words that are in my brain to up your responsiveness to have a better understanding of your donors and their issues so that you can be more responsive to their problems and thereby increasing your relationship and hopefully raising more money. Because, right, all fundraising is relationship building. That is it completely. Okay. You're in the business of relationship building. I always say this: relationship first, the money will follow. That doesn't mean we don't do our prospecting. That doesn't mean that we don't do our research. That doesn't mean that we don't do strategy. What it means is that we are out to form aligned, authentic, mutually beneficial relationships with people who share our values and our mission. Now, here's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to start with a little story, and I want you to just listen to this story for just a second. If you're listening, no problem. This is a TikTok. There's really no visual that goes along with this. So just listen. I want you to just listen to what this person is talking about. Just listen with an open mind, and then we're going to talk about it. This is going to be about a minute and a half. I'm going to play a clip of this TikTok, and that's the only setup you're getting. Here we go.
Gotten into ever over our toilet water. You tell me if I'm overreacting, because I really don't think I am. Okay, so here's what happened. Every single time I go out of town, my husband's incredible. Like, I travel a lot for work. I come home. He's so great about cleaning the house, doing the laundry, keeping up with the kitchen. The house is always immaculate when I come home. Somehow this man got it into his head that, what would be really cool is if you put one of those giant blue hockey discs in the back of your toilet water so that every time you flush, the toilet comes out blue. The toilet water comes out blue. Like we live at a 7-Eleven or something. So I come home, I'm using, I go to the bathroom and I'm like, why is the water blue? And he's like, oh, I bought these things to put in the back of the toilet. I was like, what were you doing at the store? Looking at the aisle of all the things for cleaning items for the house where you thought that would be a good idea. Take me through that. He's like, you're making such a big deal. You're being so dramatic. I'm like, I am not being dramatic. So for a month, I'm flushing the toilet and it's still blue. And I'm complaining about it every day. I'm like, Nick, I can't live like this anymore. I cannot live with the blue toilet water. So literally, we're laying in bed the other night and I just go on TikTok, how do I empty the back of my toilet tank so I can, so that I can get rid of this blue water. I literally put in the search bar, how do I empty the back of the toilet?
That's good. You heard enough of that story. Okay, so she came home from a trip. Her husband does a really great job maintaining the house, but he made a decision that she didn't like, which was the kind of product he got to keep the toilet water clean. Now, you're like, Maryanne, what in the world does this have to do with fundraising? Okay, there is a concept. Now, and wait, before I say that, I want to say this. I don't know this person. I'm just using this as an example to illustrate a concept because this is just a very clear and tangible way, but I will have tons and tons of other examples of this concept that I'm going to share with you because I really want you to understand what's happening here. There is a concept called the 3 pains. I honestly don't know where this came from. I've been working it for a while. It's a very simple sales technique. My coach, Michelle Villalobos, taught it to me, but I've also seen it in a bunch of other places. I think this is just a really well-known thing that people who work in sales, which guess what, you're in fundraising, you're in sales, use to help prospects, in your case, potential donors, or really anyone in your life, feel understood. because your job when you are enrolling somebody is not, remember, we're not pitching, we're not convincing, we're not selling, we're enrolling people in a vision. So what are the three pains? And I use the word problem and pain interchangeably, and I'm really working on moving my vernacular to the three pains. So if you hear the three problems, I will correct. If I don't, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, the first pain is the pain you know and admit to. So that's the pain, that's the top level pain. Here's the pain I have. The toilet water's blue. I don't like that, okay? The second pain is the pain you know, but don't admit to. So there's a pain that you have, but you're not really ready to admit to it. It's a little bit below the surface. Here's where the real meat of this is. The third pain is the pain you don't know, don't admit to, but someone else can see, right? Someone else can see it. I can see it, you can see, but you can't see the pain. You don't, it's not known to you yet. So the pain you know and admit to, the pain you know and don't admit to, and the pain you don't know, don't admit to, but someone else can see, right? So I, as a coach, I could see that pain. Like I understand what that pain is, even though you can't see it, okay? Because there's something in you that's not ready to accept that or welcome that thought or feeling into your world. Typically, it works like this. The pain you know and admit to is typically something you can name. It's a high level problem like the blue toilet water. Okay. It's that car, those kids, that board member, that donor, right? This report, whatever it is, if you can name it, that's the pain you know and admit to. And it's typically like a top level pain. All right. That's the top level pain. And I'm just saying typically the pain that you know and don't admit to is typically about organizational, like I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to be seen as ineffective, irresponsible. What are others thinking of me? It's typically about other people's view of you that you can say, I don't want to be perceived as a certain way or whatever. The third is the pain I don't know, don't admit to, but like someone else can see, is typically around something that involves guilt or shame within you. So it's triggering feelings in you of guilt or shame, guilt meaning what you do, and shame of being who you are, right? And those are the lowest vibrational things. We do not like feeling guilt and shame. We will do a lot in our lives to move away from feeling guilt and shame. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, mostly because we feel it in our bodies, and often because the guilt and shame will send us into the 4 Fs, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So we really want to avoid being in that space. Okay, so let's go back to our blue toilet water friend. Now, I'm really guessing here, just from this experience, just from what she said. Again, I don't know this person. I'm just using her story as a way to illustrate an example so that we can move this example into the fundraising space. Now, let's say I go on a trip and I come home and my very, very competent husband has the whole, that maybe the house is functioning better without me. And I see this blue water and it triggers something in me. And I think, and this is just my thoughts, that she could be feeling irrelevant or unnecessary to the home. Like maybe he doesn't need her. And for some reason, she wanted to have an opinion about what happened in the home. And that was maybe one thing where she was like, okay, this is not good. But instead of just saying like, oh, well, everything else is great, I'll overlook the blue toilet water. Or maybe just say, hey, next time, maybe let's not use that. Maybe let's use, I use the bleach ones. They're white, they don't have to be blue. Anyway. So, but there's something deeper going on, and it's probably about her not wanting to be seen as irrelevant, which could be triggering really deep feelings in her about inadequacy or not measuring up. And without knowing her, I don't really know, but that's where I'm going with that. Okay. But what I can tell you 100% for sure is this is not about the blue toilet water. So if you have a presenting problem like blue toilet water, and you keep talking about that top level pain, right? That presenting pain, you're not going to really get anywhere, because that's not what it's really about. The blue toilet water is the physical manifestation of some other thing that's happening. She even said this is the biggest fight of their 17-year marriage. He, of course, doesn't understand what the big deal is. And because because if she could, and if the pain that, sorry, if the pain that she knows and can't admit to, if she could admit to a pain, going a little deeper into her, like maybe that clarity, that asking herself the question, why is this bothering me so much? What's going on in me that this upsets me so much? And maybe tapping into that a little bit and see if she can come up with some clarity for herself. Like, oh gosh, maybe I'm feeling irrelevant. Maybe I'm feeling like I don't really matter in my own home. That's something that if she brought that out, okay, that's something you can work with. As long as you're talking about that top level thing, you're really not going to get anywhere. So remember, those are the three pains: the pain you know and admit to, pain you know and don't admit to, the pain you don't know, don't admit to, but someone else can see. I want to say one more thing about the third pain before I get into some more examples and some more context into how this shows up in fundraising, because literally it shows up for me almost every single day in almost every single aspect of my life. But let me just say, if there's a pain that you don't know, don't admit to, but someone else can see and they call you on it, it can be very, very intimidating. That is called a blind spot. We all have blind spots. Blind spots means there are things known about me, like that I don't want to show other people that other people can see. And you know this because I know you can see this all the time. Like something somebody does is so clear to you, yet it is not clear to that person. So if you call somebody out on a blind spot, it's very, very intimidating. And they will again go into the 4Fs: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Because whatever that thing is that they don't know and don't admit to is probably outside of what I call the ego system, not the ecosystem, the ego, EGO, the ego system that they have created in their view of self, right? So our sense of self, if our ego system or our sense of self gets attacked, right? Or we feel an attack on us, then, like feeling inefficient or feeling not valued or misunderstood or whatever those feelings are. If her sense of self is to be needed and that's important to her, and now she doesn't feel needed in her own home, and so feeling irrelevant could really be a deep wound for her. And so if somebody says, well, it's because you were feeling obviously irrelevant, like, wait, what? Hold on. No, because that's outside of her ego system, her sense of self. So we will reject anything that is outside of our sense of self, whether that's over or under. And what I mean by over is if our ego is like, say, like I did this exercise the other day, and and you can do this exercise with me right now. You can say, I am, and think of 3 words that describe you. I am. And I said, I'm going to stop. Give me 3 words. I'll give you a second to think of some words. Okay. Whatever your words are, hold those. My words were clever, funny, and smart. That is part of my ego system, is being clever, funny, and smart. So if somebody would call me dumb or an idiot or boring or stupid or whatever, I would reject that because that's outside of my ego system, my sense of self. Okay. Also, I think I'm smart. Like, I'm smart. Okay. Smarter than the average bear. Oh, you're the smartest woman in the world. Well, no, I'm not that. Okay. So, because that's outside of my ego system the other way. This is often why we deflect compliments. I'm not going to talk about that today, but that's one of the things that we work on in my influence course is learning to receive compliments, because of what we want to do, what the goal of my coaching is, what the goal of your work is to expand that view of self to include all of this. Because once we love and accept all of ourselves, then these things don't really bother us. And we walk through the world with a lot more ease and grace. Because, yeah, I mean, I can be very kind, and part of my ego system is kindness, but also I can be kind of mean, you know? And so, and if I accept all those parts of me, and when somebody says, Maryanne, you're kind of mean, I'm like, yeah, sometimes I am. I'm lovable and unlovable. I was really unlovable the other night. I was super crabby with my husband. Mostly, the closest to you get to see you operate outside of that ego system, ego, ego, remember, most often. And so just to understand that if you tell somebody something about them that's outside of their ecosystem, they go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and they are no longer capable of listening or really rational thought. And so we want to keep people out of that. So how do we help somebody expand their sense of self, understand what the real problem is while keeping them safe, right? And we're going to get into exactly how to do that. I want to give you a couple of more examples though of how this shows up in the nonprofit world in your life. I'll give you tons of examples because this literally shows up all the time. I know people are coming to you with problems all day long, right? Your board says, oh, if we had a brochure, if we had talking points, or if you gave us social media campaign, we would fundraise. And so you go and you make that brochure and you're like, here's your brochure, here's your talking points, or here's your script. Go forth. And they don't, right? The brochure sits in boxes, the script doesn't get used, nothing changes. That's because that was the problem that they could admit to, which is they need a brochure. They need a tool. Remember, the top level is typically something you can name. It's a thing, it's a tool, it's a strategy, right? If you can name it, it's that, okay? So, but this is why when you solve the top level problem, you're not really solving the problem because that really wasn't the problem. It was the physical manifestation of some deeper issues. And if we can get to those deeper issues, we can really make the change that we want, right? Let me give you another example. A donor calls up because this happened at a hospital foundation that I did a presentation for. I was working on them about resolving conflict, which this is an excellent tool for resolving conflict, because your conflict will go round and round and round and round if you're still on that top pane. Okay, so so the donor says, calls and says, I'm really upset because I give to the heart fund, but I was thanked for giving to the lung fund. And now that's the problem that they know and admit to, but they're calling about it. So that's not really the problem. Because if people don't call you for the top level problem, okay? If that didn't, because it wouldn't even register, right? Like, oh, or whatever, technical, right? So if that person calls you and they're upset, and the guy says, I'm really upset, and you say, oh, that was just a data technical snafu, I'll change that right away and send you a new letter. You're only addressing the pain they know and admit to. But you can see the fact that they're calling, the fact that there's upset in their voice, that they're probably feeling irrelevant, not valued, maybe overlooked, and by the organization. Remember, the second pain is about how others perceive us, right? That he's perceiving the organization as not to care very much about him. And then so the third pain could be really something in him that maybe his whole life he's felt overlooked or misunderstood. Most of these are pains that we can that third pain about the guilt and shame stems from something in our childhood. So I'm going to guess that something in this person's childhood, and I'm just going to guess that maybe in their life, they felt misunderstood, overlooked, unappreciated. So when things like this happen, it means something to them because this could happen to somebody else. Maybe it did happen to a lot of people and nobody else really cared because it really didn't activate anything in them, right? Getting the fund wrong was not part of their ego system, right? That did not mean anything to their ego system that they operate within, their sense of self. So it didn't matter because when people bring something to you, it's because something is in conflict with their ego system, their sense of self. All right. And we will defend our sense of self. Okay. So let's go back to the board and the brochure. What is the board really saying when they ask for a brochure? The pain that they know and probably can't admit to is they're lacking confidence. They don't want to disappoint the organization. They don't want to get something wrong. If you would ask the board member when they say, "Can you make us a brochure?" Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk about that with you. Tell me how that brochure can help you. Help me understand what function that board. Well, we would just have the right things to say, okay, what would happen if you said the wrong thing? Well, then we wouldn't get the gift. What would happen if you didn't get the gift? Well, then we would disappoint you or we would maybe ruin a relationship. Okay. So now we're getting somewhere because really the pain that they know and aren't really admitting to is that they don't want to screw it up, right? They don't want to screw it up. They need some confidence or a reframe to be able to do this. But the pain that they don't know and don't understand, probably can't admit to, is no one wants to feel ineffective. No one wants to feel like a screw up. No one wants to feel like you wrecked something on the very organization that you are supposed to be helping. And that guilt and shame can be pretty strong. But what our society kind of tells us and sort of what we're conditioned to think is like, oh, this thing outside me, this brochure will increase my confidence. But it's actually the opposite. We increase the confidence, create the brochure, and use those things together. We can have confidence and tools and have them work together. But if we expect a tool, that first pain, whatever that is, the blue toilet water, to solve this issue, it's not going to. Because what will happen inevitably is, let's say the blue toilet water is now running beautifully clear, right? But the problem really wasn't solved because the person didn't. I'm not sure this person, and maybe she's grown from this, and hopefully she has. But the self-awareness to say, okay, what is the pain? What is the pain here? What am I really feeling? Um, and deal with that. And so because what'll happen is something else will just come up, how they vacuumed or, what they stocked the pantry with or whatever. There's something else that will come up and it will keep coming up until that issue is addressed. So if you're having an issue where something keeps coming up over and over and over again, it's probably because you're dealing with the top pain. Okay. And not the pain that they know and admit to. And here's the thing, the pain they don't know, don't admit to, but you can see that is something that, how do I want to say this? That you don't actually have to get to. And also, if you can, it's incredibly effective. But even if you're just dealing with the pain they know and don't admit to, they're going to feel seen and heard. So if you tell that donor that got so upset about the heart fund or the lung fund, and you say, "I am so sorry this happened. I know it must be so disappointing for you to see this because I know how devoted you are to the heart fund, and that I'm so glad you brought this to me because if that bothered you, I certainly would want to know so that we can get that fixed and we can reiterate to you how important and valuable you are to our organization." Now that person may be like, "Oh, right, yeah, but it's really no big deal." And because they know in their conscious brain that it really isn't a big deal, right? Like, I know this is just toilet water. I know this is just a data breach. And also, and yes, that's true. And also, and not a data breach, like a data snafu. And also, it hurt, and both those things can be true. And it hurts. And so, and like, but when you bring it down to that pain they know and don't admit to, and you go, "Man, that must have really hurt you. I am thank you for bringing this to me. I'm so sorry that happened." And they go, "Thank you." They feel seen, they feel heard, they feel understood, they feel so good because you get them. You got what they were even afraid to say, but you did it in a way that was super loving, right? And I'm not saying you got to go all psychoanalyst on this person, right? I'm just saying, just even addressing that is going to get to it, and they may even say something like, I just, in my life, I always feel like I'm not appreciated. So when I see stuff like that, it really bothers me. Like maybe really self-aware people will share that stuff with you. But even not, you can just say, hey, our job is to make you feel valued and to communicate how much you mean to us as a donor and how important you are. And if we're not doing that, thank you so much, so that we can make sure we're communicating that with you. And I'm going to tell you, what makes problems go away? When you start dealing with those three pains. The idea is to walk people to that pain instead of telling them what it is. Because like I said, you don't want to call somebody out on your blind spot. So when your board member says, "Hey, we need that brochure," and you say, "Yeah, obviously, because obviously I'm seeing that you have a deep-seated fear of rejection." Like, wait, what? No, that's not what I'm saying. Because again, we're operating outside of our ego system. Okay. So we want to lead people to that. So I'm going to go back to the board thing. Okay. So what could you say to the board member to help shift their thinking? Because here's the thing, your job, remember, I started this conversation, your job is to help people feel seen, heard, and understood. People will buy, AKA donate, to the level they feel seen, heard, and understood. So that's your job, not to pitch, not to sell, not convince. We know that doesn't work. Your job is to help people feel seen, heard, and understood. And this is the way that you do it. So if you ask that board member, hey, tell me what that brochure will do with you. Oh, it'll give us confidence. Okay. Tell me what it would mean if you had confidence. Well, I could, um, I wouldn't worry so much about getting it wrong, right? So they're very worried about getting it wrong or screwing up. And because if they screwed something up, then they would have the guilt and shame and might have a really hard time accepting that. And that risk is too high. The risk of being forced to operate outside your ecosystem is too high. Therefore, they will not act. So we have to lower the risk. We have to take away the risk. And so when I train boards on this, I do a lot of work up front, reframing their thoughts and feelings around fundraising so I can lower the risk and so that it can stay within the framework of the ecosystem of their sense of self. And I'm telling you, this stuff works. And people aren't talking about this, and they're not talking like this, which is why I'm so committed to do what I do, because they're giving you templates and scripts and strategies and saying, this will fix it. It won't, because they're still going to be operating outside of their ecosystem. So we're going to minimize the risk so that what they do can stay. We're going to do two things. We're going to minimize the risk so they can operate inside their ecosystem while helping them expand their ecosystem to tolerate more experiences. And one of the ways we minimize the risk is to say, hey, you don't have to make anybody do anything. Your only job is to make an authentic connection. If there's a connection, great, send them our way. If not, that's okay too. I have a firm belief that board members don't need to be asking for money. That's not their job. Their job is to connect you with people. Because, asking for money and having those conversations and navigating that's a high level skill. And so the way I think it works best, and just in my experience, is when board members generate leads, and then the staff then goes and connects with those folks and makes the deal, right? Whatever way it goes. So one of the biggest things is we release the outcome. You don't have to do anything. You have to make anybody do anything. You don't you literally can't mess this up. All you have to do is connect with people and see if there's an alignment. And if there's a fit, great. If not, that's okay too. I did a board training this has been a while. And I asked the board, what do they love doing and what do they, not love doing and all of that. And they said they don't love fundraising. What do they love doing? Giving tours, talking about the organization, bringing people in to volunteer. This is a very heavily volunteer-driven organization. And it's like, that's all part of fundraising, but they didn't see it as a part of that. Because they thought fundraising was asking people for money. Okay, so now we can stretch right? We're going to stretch them by helping them understand that, hey, like you're already doing it. It's already in your ecosystem. What you're doing is already fundraising. You're already part of the process, but also helping them expand that and expand their ecosystem a little bit to be a little more intentional about the tours and the conversations they have, so that they can see if there is interest in becoming a donor and then connecting them with the right people. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to minimize the risk and while we're expanding their sense of self. But if something feels like it could potentially put you outside of your ecosystem, outside of your sense of self, then you will not do it. Right. I mean, I like trivia. I go to trivia. I love trivia, but if like am I gonna go to a sports trivia? Oh gosh, that's outside my ego. Now I would feel stupid. I don't want to feel stupid. So I'm not going to do that because it's outside of my ecosystem. It's outside of my sense of self. It will not support or defend my sense of self. So I'm not going to do it. The same way, I love karaoke. I don't like karaoke contests. Never have. That's not part because I don't want to lose. Like karaoke is just a fun thing. It's about being funny and expressive and so winning or losing, oh now it's a disappointment. Now I'm attached to the outcome. Oh, I don't want to do that. And so I don't want to play because it's outside of my sense of self. And I will support or defend anything that, I will attack, I will reject anything that is outside my sense of self and support or defend anything that is inside my sense of self. And when I started my business, I had a very, I would say, more narrow sense of self and who I was and what I could accomplish. And through the work of my coaches and guides, I really expanded that sense of self and what my ecosystem was and how I could operate in the world. And I found it very freeing and very exciting. And so for you as an executive director, as a fundraiser, and you feel like you're fielding problems and putting out fires all day long, start thinking about this in those 3 levels: the pain they know and admit to, the pain they know don't admit to, and the pain they don't know don't admit to. And you can see and ask them the questions to help them get to a clearer understanding of what the problem is. And here are the questions that I find the most helpful in sort of uncovering the pain. And this isn't a pushing information into people, this is gently pulling things out of them, right? And here's the thing, you're only going to get people as far as they're willing to go. Okay, and that's just it, and that's fine. I'm going to give you an example of that, what that looks like in a minute, but that's okay. So here's the questions. Tell me more about that. Help me understand that. What makes you say that, or what makes you ask that, right? Board member says, have you ever thought about having a gala? Oh, yeah, this, a couple times. What makes you ask that? Oh, I just went to this gala and it was amazing. And blah, blah, blah. Oh, really? What was amazing about it? Well, everybody was just so excited about the organization and felt so connected to it. Okay, so you feel like, we could have more excitement and more connection to our organization? Yeah, I would love that. Okay, well, tell me what that would look like in our organization. What would that look like? Because let me just tell you, they're going to come with that gala stuff. And then now you're going to be putting together a gala and you're like, oh my God, I just didn't, and I can't do a gala. But it's not about the gala. It's about what it means. What does that mean? And how other people see them and how they see themselves. So the pain that you know and admit to, right? That's the thing outside of ourselves. The pain that I know and often don't admit to is how other people see me. And the pain that I know that I don't know, don't admit to, and don't admit or don't know, don't understand, don't admit to, but other people can see is about my own sense of self, my ego system. It's going to be outside of what I think my ego system is. Now, I want you to think about using these tools. You can also use these tools a lot in like your marketing and communications, because I want you to talk to people not about the problem, right? But what's the deeper problem that's going on? Yes, we have hungry people, or we have people who are unhoused, but what happens to people who go hungry all the time, right? What are the deeper pains that we're experiencing? Because that's what people really connect to, right? And so we can start with our marketing and our messaging, and we can talk about those deeper pains, because that creates that universal experience. Because even if I've never been hungry, I can maybe empathize with somebody who just doesn't know how they're going to make it through the day. who, and I can tap into that uncertainty and how uncomfortable it feels to feel uncertain. Okay. I have so many more examples about what this looks like. And also, I want you to start thinking about your three pains. When somebody comes to you with something, as a CEO, as a coach and guide for your board members, as a donor, as a steward of your donors, work within the three pains. Remember, the presenting pain is never actually the pain. It's the physical manifestation of something going on so much deeper, right? And, that's it for me and the influential nonprofit on today's episode. If you're interested in learning from me, learning all kinds of really cool ways that I help people connect better with others, donors, and everyone else in your life, actually creating better relationships with donors, board members, volunteers, your staff, your team, your community, your family, your friends, anybody you're in relationship with. You can connect with me. It's go to courageouscommunication.com/connect. The link is in the chat, in the chat, in the show notes, and book a call with me and just tell me what's going on. Tell me what you want some help with. If you're feeling isolated, burnt out, if you're feeling like you need inspiration, if you feel like you want to connect with people better, you want to ask for the really big money, you want to have the important conversations, and you just don't know how, book a call with me and we'll talk about it. I've got really cool programs for individuals, for teams, for boards that we can tap into, see if it's a right fit for you. As always, I release the outcome myself. I love having these calls. It's never obligation. It's always a joy to connect with you. Whether or not we decide to work together, you will have some great guidance, some strategies, something for you to take with and start operating more effectively just from 15-30 minutes with me. And I hope to connect with you soon. See you next time on the Influential Nonprofit.